Hello everyone, welcome back to Maverick Mods. Well, in today's episode, starting the sheet metal repair on the Firebird, and we get to take care of the final disposition on the Z28. On the Firebird, you're going to see some hammering, some cutting, some grinding, maybe some welding, possibly some cussing, although I think I edited that out. So, stay tuned. If you ever had something that just kind of bugs you and you just got to deal with it, even though you may not have to do it right away, well, the pinch weld on the Firebird was one of those. It's seen some abuse, had a few dents and wrinkles. So I figured while the car's on the rotisserie, before I really get started on some of the body work, we'll go ahead and straighten the pinch weld out. Hopefully this hammer's big enough. Let's see. Don't be afraid to use any tool at your disposal. All this is for is just to get that metal to a point where I can get the hammer on it. There we go. Now we can finesse it a little bit. Not bad. Let's see what else we can work on here. Once in a while, you kind of look at the other side, compare the two of them. They both look pretty bad. But I have a sneaking suspicion that this probably should stay fairly close to that. If anything, I ought to just clean that up a little bit. But I still got to bring this out just a little bit more. We're pretty close there. Let's see what a little bit of a big hammer will do. Okay. May not look like it on camera, but that's actually pretty darn straight. For a lot of the sheet metal replacement on the car, I will have it blocked, leveled, and otherwise make sure that the entire car is square. The one area that I'm not too concerned about is this rear trunk pan. So we can get to that while the car is still on the rotisserie. Right here, we've got some rot through here. It extends right up into here. We got some here, here. And what I'm doing is I am looking through and looking for light showing through, and otherwise areas right there, right there. I'm not worried about what's in the center here. I'm looking at the peripheries. So it looks good along the edge here. I have something. This is not a rust hole, but that looks like a screw poked through right there. Got some right through here, some up here. Before you think that's the end of it, always look on the other side of the panel to see what's there. So let's take a look. So on the underneath side of the panel, again, if we look through, we're looking for, you know, light shining through, things like that. We know about that. We know about that. That area. Not worried about the center because we know about all that. So I'm looking, how are we looking along this seam, along the frame rail? We got some here and here. If you can put a really bright light on the other side, that really helps too. So we'll go through and take a look and see just exactly how much of this panel really needs to be replaced. But if I looked at the top, I might actually, by mistake, cut through part of the frame rail or cut through part of this seam right here, which we don't want to do. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to take it maybe 1/4 of an inch. I think I can get away with 1/4 of an inch. A little bit of rot, but I can fix that. Bring it up to about here. come down. We'll check on the inside and see if I can just bring it right along here and then bring it somewhere in the middle of this flat spot, so I've got a good surface to weld to. The next step, or I should say a very important step, before you even think about starting cutting away sheet metal, is take your replacement panel and let's see just how far it covers. So, is that oriented right? Yes, it is. Okay, so basically, here's our back edge at this seam. This is designed to go underneath the frame rail if necessary, which in our case we don't have to. So basically, this panel would come all the way up to this seam right up here. And we don't need to take nearly that far. This is all still in good shape. So essentially what we're looking at is dealing with no more than maybe this area right along here. Again, just because you've got a complete panel doesn't mean you have to replace the entire panel. Only patch in to get back to good metal on both sides. There have been times in the past where I'm kind of guilty of measure once, cut twice. Doesn't really work all the time. That can get kind of expensive. So I'm going to look back and forth on both sides of this panel several times just to make sure that what I'm cutting out is the right thing, the right areas. So another thing that helps too, which I will start on the other side, I'm just verifying again exactly how far we need to come up here, here, if we need to come all the way out to here, and just where we need to come over here and back. As you can see, connect the dots. So we'll get this part of the panel cut out. I do have a little bit of additional to cut from the inside. But let's cut the outside first, then we'll deal with the inside. So we're back on the inside of the car here real quick. That part of the floor pan was only part one because I still have a couple of rot through holes and some really rotted metal here. Problem is behind it is the actual frame rail. So I cut that part here first. I'm going to come back and cut out this section. I've already verified that this floor pan is enough to cover it. It's always a good idea to double check that. So, and the reason I did that was because I need to get to these spot welds. Now here, I'm not going to drill the spot welds out from this direction. I'm going to grind the spot welds away from this direction so that I save the integrity of the spot weld through the frame rail. So, let's measure, mark, and cut the remaining portion of this seat pan. Let's try to do a little bit of grinding. With the opening for the seat pan cut, I had to trim the replacement panel just a little bit to the point where I could drop it in. Obviously, this is just the first test fit. I cut just enough metal away that I could actually drop it in there. Next, I'm going to hold that panel in place. Now it's going to be a lot of trimming to fit the existing opening. Most of the time, when you start doing test fitting like this, you're going to need to measure a little bit more precisely and probably sheet metal screw or secure clamp the replacement panel. In this case, I can hold it right here for the base initial cut for the perimeter here. Then I'll have to cut that and then go back up top and do a little bit more interesting type of trimming for up top. But in this circumstance, I should be able to just hold this and take my scribe trim that a little closer, see how we did. Well, I spared you the last few hours of cutting, test fitting, cutting, test fitting, cutting, test fitting. I've got the panel fairly close. A few more tweaks to go, but one of the things I do have to do once I get it close in here, not only does it have to be welded around the perimeter, but I also have to replicate the spot welds from the inside. And of course I can't go through the outside, so I need to describe a line along here. Basically tells me where the frame rail is, and then mark where my spot welds are going to go, and then measure the depth inboard, and I'll drill holes in the panel so that I can spot weld it from the top side. So I'll go do that. Okay, so we're into final fitting of the panel, and I'm pretty close on my gaps for welding, but I do have one issue, and that is the panel doesn't sit flush in the front. It sits good everywhere except right here. And let's take a look at why. So it's not the panel itself. This right here is just bad factory panels. I've got a good fitment along the frame rail along here. This had the gap before, but what I'm running into right here is it's actually the factory frame rail has got a kink right up in here. Now, there's not a whole heck of a lot I can do to the factory frame rail, but I can massage the panel. And when I say massage, I mean beat it with a hammer until it fits a little bit more flush. A lot of times guys will complain, oh, this aftermarket panel doesn't fit well. You know, the factory sheet metal never really fit all that well to begin with. So I'm thinking that this replacement panel, pretty darn close. The factory frame rail was not the precise part in this case. So let me massage that a little bit and we'll come back. I'm going to interrupt myself here for just a second. My last comment probably just set the internet on fire. There's going to be guys that are just absolutely adamant that the holy grail is going to be factory sheet metal. And the replacement panels are garbage, they're junk, they don't fit, they're not made right, etc. In some cases that might very well be true, but in some cases we got to remember the days of laser aligned jigged bodies didn't really start until probably somewhere around the mid to late 90s. You know, panel fit and fitment as we know it today did not exist back in the 60s and 70s. You had, I don't know how many jigs. It probably depends on how many cars that particular factory thought they were going to make for the year, the quarter. But they were all mechanical jigs. They were all set up mechanically. They all had tolerances. Even the first time the jig was set up. So we also don't know how many cars were assembled on that jig before the jig reached its tolerance and maybe was out of tolerance. So it's very possible that, you know, the factory sheet metal, as it was put together when it was stamped, might not have been the greatest. Shape-wise, as it was put together, might not have been perfectly straight. We don't know. But the tolerances were also a little bit more lenient back then than they are today. So that's where my comment with modern replacement panels versus factory sheet metal is. It's not always the replacement panel. Sometimes it's what you're working with to begin with. So back to the action. A little massaging with a hammer, kind of right in this area here, just to make room for that frame rail that did not match the contour of the seat pan. Other than that, it's laying flat now, looks good. Not quite ready yet, still got to clean up the edges. I'll do that. We'll come back and do some welding. I've got the Z28 stripped down, other than the glass, literally to the bare shell. So I've got every possible usable part that my bad, stepped on a screw, stepped on a bolt, sorry about that. Every possible usable part that I think I can get off of this that can be unbolted. But that doesn't mean that there's not still usable parts. What do I mean by that? Well, if I'm going to adapt the air conditioning system, I've measured both firewalls, and the air conditioning system from this Z28 will fit in the Firebird. It'll fit even better if I take that chunk of firewall from the Z28 and use it as a template, or better yet, graft it into the firewall on the Firebird, if you get my drift. Same situation over here. If I want to keep the steering, brakes, clutch system, I don't know if I can adapt the setup here, but I'm going to give it a try. It looks like I might be able to. We'll see. This trans tunnel has a weird shape to it. At first glance, you might think, of course, back in the back, that is crash damage. But from this seam forward, it looks kind of odd because it's not a symmetric shape. That's actually on purpose, because there needs to be room for the torque arm. I am going to fabricate my own torque arm for the Firebird, but I might need pieces of this tunnel to make that happen. It's going to be better off if I can either transfer parts over graft this entire top part of this tunnel. We'll see what happens. I'm going to take the majority of the floor as part of the floor, although I won't take the entire floor. I am going to see about, from a mounting standpoint and a height standpoint, if I need to take these brackets. So the easiest way to get all of this out and get this hulk, or what's left of it, out of the way, I'm just going to cut a good chunk of the floor out, including the tunnel. I'm going to take a few things like these brackets for mounting the instrument panel, excuse me, the dash. And other than that, we'll see what happens. So from here on out, anybody that's squeamish or faint of heart probably shouldn't want to watch this, because my next tool of choice is a Sawzall. And I'm just going to start from the top down and the back forward and start cutting off everything that I don't think I'm going to need, that I'm going to reuse, that I can't keep for the various occasional chunks and pieces of scrap metal and or anything else of use. So, cue the music. Time for the Sawzall. Last week, I had a few days where filming was kind of an on-again, off-again proposal because of this. So there you have it. The Z28 is gone. Now I can just concentrate on the Firebird. So the next few episodes, you're mainly going to see sheet metal body panel replacement as we get the Firebird one step closer to starting to mock it up and see what parts of the Z28 we can actually adapt over to the Firebird. The little air show routine had to do with the Blue Angels coming out for an air show out here this last weekend. If anybody's interested, I've got some footage of that. It's not the greatest, but I'll stitch some of that together, maybe put it on the channel here in the next few days. So look for that. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. It certainly would help me out. Everybody, have a good day.